As always, I apologize in advance.
No, it's no use.
No, you gotta be at the end.
I'm listening to jazz right now. I mean, I'm talking to you, but I have no idea what I'm saying because I'm listening to jazz. I mean, I'm probably talking total nonsense to you right now, like the names of Academy Award winners spelled backwards, like sentences with zip codes in place of the verbs, like the Bill of Rights with the phrase antimicrobial bathroom cleanser inserted after every few words. I have no idea what I'm saying because I'm listening to jazz. And don't even ask me who in particular I'm listening to because I have no idea. As far as I'm concerned, it's all one guy. Yeah, that's right. One guy has recorded all the jazz throughout history. I mean, he's a really old guy, of course, having recorded all the jazz and everything, and he must be really tired, having played all the instruments and done all the singing, and I'm sure that the big band era was really tough for him. But it all comes from him. A guy named Jazz. Arthur Jazz, or Osgood Jazz, or Emmett Jazz. I'm not really sure what his first name is, but I know that his last name is definitely Jazz. Yeah, that's who I'm listening to. A guy named Jazz, a cat named Jazz, and he's speaking to me right now, and he's an eloquent orator, Mr. Jazz is, and I don't listen to anyone else, and you would be best to listen to him too. And you know why? Well, you know all that other music like funk and punk and grunge and electronica and rockabilly and salsa and reggae and polka and gospel and soul and Irish folk and Delta blues and Chicago blues and overproduced mainstream country and western? Well, all that other music is done by a bunch of different people, sometimes 5 or 6 people at a time! But not jazz. See, all jazz is done by one guy. Calvin Jazz. Or Preston Jazz, or Leslie Jazz, whatever his name is. All I know is that this Mr. Jazz person rocks. This is my love poem. Singular. Oh my God, you are so pretty. You're so pretty that you make me nervous. Okay, so everything makes me nervous. But you make me this weird kind of nervous, which causes the narcissism that I've come to rely on so heavily just melt away. And then I just want to fill your eyes with pleasure. Okay, so I have no idea how to do that. But the point is that I want to. I want to so badly that I start to sweat and tremble, and finally I pass out, and I wake up in the back of an ambulance with 2 paramedics crouching over me, telling me that my blood pressure is 200 over 140, and that my pulse is over 100, and that they don't know what's wrong with me, but that they're really worried because they think that my heart is about to explode. And that's not good. I need my heart. Because besides being the organ responsible for the pumping of oxygenated blood to the body and oxygen-poor blood to the lungs for reoxygenation, the heart is also responsible for reminding me that you are smart and talented and sweet and sexy and brave and unconventional and disturbing and fascinating and pretty. Yeah, you're so goddamn motherfucking pretty! And quite frankly, I really hate this feeling, because while on the one hand it's nice to be in a relationship where the police never have to be called because I feel safe falling asleep in an apartment which contains my lover, cutlery, and my penis, I am on the other hand confused and intimidated by these things which you earthlings call love and happiness, being much more comfortable with states of mind like despair and disgust and paranoia and rage. Although on yet another hand, after decades of therapy in which I have struggled to tear down the walls which have been put up by my subconscious as a manifestation of a fear of intimacy deeply rooted in childhood issues of abandonment and self-esteem, I finally have my first breakthrough when I help you on with your coat. Thank you. How many people in this room are teachers?
Oh my God.
Strike! Strike!
That's terrible.
Strike!
There's a lot of intelligence in this room. This is my brother Don, who is, I hope I don't mean to embarrass you. Don is the executive director of the Oakland School of the Arts.
Oh,
And
all right.
if you don't know what that is correct me if I'm wrong, Performing Arts High School started by Jerry Brown when he was the mayor of Oakland, right? And a lot of good goes on there, a lot of great positive things. Mitt Romney should come down and check it out and see what's that.
Take a course.
Definitely take a course on how to be a human being. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, the reason I asked that is because this next thing is about something that I'm accused of, and it just made me think of teachers, and I know that there are a few teachers here, so anyway. People tell me that I'm too cerebral, that I think too much. But here's a thought. Would you have said that to Einstein? Like, Einstein, dude, lighten up, you think too much. E equals M, that's enough. No, of course not, because it's not possible to think too much. Thinking is what defines us as people and sets us apart from the hamster and the bunny rabbit and the aardvark and the possum and the platypus and the caribou and the koala bear and the panda bear and the howler monkey and the African spider monkey and the Alaskan snow leopard. And how can you do too much of something that does that? But here's a thought. You would never say to a dog, "Hey dog, you lick your own crotch too much." Because that's how dogs define themselves. They lick their own crotches. So when we think, it's like we're licking our own crotches. And without the ability to think and or lick our own crotches, we would just be snarling creatures instinctively lashing out with swift and horrible violence at anyone who threatens us. And sure, there are lots of people like that in the world right now. But here's a thought. Maybe those people are like that because they don't think enough.
Maybe it's because they can't lick their crotch.
Wow.
All right.
Deep thought. This next thing I'm going to read, I wrote right here, over there somewhere, when I first came here in January. I had fractured my ankle driving a cab for Luxor. This is Jimmy and I both drive for Luxor. And,
Same cab, actually.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And I was attacked by a wheelchair accessible ramp van. Don't ask. And I came here on crutches and sat down there and went through my notebook, got a bowl of vegetarian chili and sat there and went through my notebook and took all the phrases, the odd phrases that I hadn't used, and wanted to see if I could just string them all together and write something and then get up and read it right that night. And this is the result of that. I dreamed that I stood naked before Fred and Ethel Mertz, who told me to stop watching so much TV and listen more to the noise of the Christmas methadone-addled poor, and see if I can catch a glimpse of a glimmer, of a glint of a shard, of a fragment of a sliver of hope, amidst the jostling for position of Jesus wannabes dipping their fingers in bowls of digitized holy water, while their collective flickering morality intermittently illuminates the compulsive saluting of Napoleonic beat cops who were just doing the job that they were hired to do, which apparently includes hassling the ever-multiplying numbers of cosmic orphans who can only stare blankly at the overrated reality of mega-mall fascism and masturbatory politeness, their ears ringing with the hipster lingo of the day-glow soccer mom and the demands of infants to be taken off speakerphone, their to-do lists awash in reminders to update their self-destruction before returning to their refrigerated apartments where Fred and Ethel Mertz await, somewhere in the world, every second of the day. You know that I Love Lucy is playing somewhere right now, somewhere in the world.
That's right. Beat it by the Benjamin.
Is that what I have?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little man. A small, insignificant, microscopic, minuscule, granular speck of a man. I'm the beard stubble on a hologram. I'm a dead guy's imaginary friend. I'm steam that has phoned it in. I am the waste product of a fictional character from a novel that no one has ever read. I'm a nowhere man. I'm less than zero. I'm nothing. I get my protein from dead celebrities. I wander through minefields looking for an ice machine. I sit at the back of the bus with skateboard gypsies while ordained, chain-smoking cellular carnivores hover above us, asking God to bless the closed-circuit mobility which each night escorts us back to our pastel poverty, where empty swimming pools try to steal our souls and adolescent billboards spin around in circles while throwing their acid flashback coloring books at each other, and scaring my frail spinster of a television set whose anxiety disorder manifests itself in electronic pulses which blurt out images of robots who go to the gym and who can stand in the middle of the apocalypse and not get their hair mussed, and who have air conditioners where their souls should be, and who together are locked into a synchronized sterility as they push an agenda of synthetic snooze alarm carnality. And who are living proof that if you smirk too much, your face will just stay like that. They never blink as they tell of buildings that are frightened, and of grains of sand that whisper prayers, and of the shifting perspectives of an hysterical ant farm in which sirens are redundant. They make me afraid to leave my apartment for fear of tripping over the stealth penises and evangelical carbohydrates of the celestial wholesaler. So I push through flashes of backlit reality, searching for punctual poets who will give me 5 minutes, but all I find are politicians who smell like Mel Gibson and remind me that America is on its 8th sequel. Instead of weapons, they bust out guitars and launch into a food chain instrumental, while everywhere I go, TV reminds me that the only ones who matter are the edited and the shaped and the hyped, who revel in LA freeway suicide ecstasy, who bark at liberal seamen, and who use world leaders to pick their teeth. Well, I am just a consumer whose raw footage existence is of no importance, because it's trumped by mutant Bible study partisans who just want to blow shit up. So I get in my car and I drive north out of town at 110 per, leaving behind the patriotic bath towels and the Orwellian stand-up comedy and the perpetually winking punk rock and the kindergarten revisionists and the stuttering peace signs and the questions that breed like rabbits and the rabid, thuggish mental patients with book deals and the armies of effervescent genetically modified voters and the sad and the scared and the beaten and the bloodied and the dead. I weave back and forth and in and out from lane to lane, still trying to cross the line between personal rage and public outrage, as the occasional curious helicopter reminds me that the only real power is in privacy. Eventually I reach the desert where the only sign of life is a motel, which greets me with a bed and a bath and a radio that only plays songs from the past. I lay down and close my eyes, trying to think of ways to save the other planet Earth. But I can't because my head hurts. And all I want to do is fall asleep, curled up next to someone who agrees with me.
Where do you find the courage?
Dear Mr. Harris, our records indicate that your account is now 60 days past due. Our records also indicate that you have ignored our repeated requests to bring your account up to date. Now, Mr. Harris, you may see us as a huge and faceless corporation which provides services to millions of people, and you may think that as long as the majority of these people pay their bills on time and in full, that a handful of people, such as yourself, Mr. Harris, can just slide, ignoring the contractual obligation that you have made to our company. But let us assure you, Mr. Harris, that while we are indeed a huge corporation, we are anything but faceless. In fact, we employ thousands of faces. Faces which belong to people whose lives, nay, whose very existences, depend on you honoring your commitment to us. People like Director of Personnel Jack Stevens, who has a wife and 4 children and 2 mortgages and a summer home in the Hamptons and a 40-foot sailboat, which is, incidentally, his only means of communing with nature, an environment which, in the highly pressurized and completely dehumanizing hustle and bustle of daily urban life, is all that stands between him and complete and utter madness. People like customer service representative Rose Fernandez, single mother and sole means of support for bright-eyed and delightful little 14-month-old Michael Fernandez, whose young life is in your hands, Mr. Harris. For you see, Mr. Harris, when you entered into a contractual obligation with our company, not only did you make a commitment to a corporate entity, but you also took partial responsibility for the lives of fellow human beings. In short, Mr. Harris, we are not just an institution of huge proportions and vast holdings. We are America. And if you feel that it is unnecessary for you to honor your commitment to America, well then why don't you just move to China? Yeah, that's it. Why don't you just move to China, Mr. Harris? And then, maybe after you've had a taste of how the Chinese deal with people who refuse to conform, who refuse to toe the party line, who refuse to contribute to the greater good, maybe after you've spent a decade rotting in a Chinese prison, completely isolated, starved nearly to death, and totally forgotten by everyone who's ever known you, then maybe you'll appreciate how little we asked of you! But, don't get us wrong, Mr. Harris. This has gone far beyond us merely interrupting your service or reporting into a credit agency like Experian. Oh no, we have plans for you. Yes, we're going to make an example of you. For you see, Mr. Harris, as we are an institution of huge proportions and vast holdings, we can therefore affect your life in ways that you would never even imagine. And in case you think we're bluffing, bear in mind that Princess Diana didn't pay her bill either. Traffic accident, our ass, Mr. Harris. In short, Mr. Harris, if you fuck with us, you get burned. If you have any questions regarding this letter, please contact our accounting department, and may you rot in hell. You. I'll read one more, but before I do, I just want to say that a few years ago when I was first deciding to move to San Francisco, I got this idea in my head of what the poetry scene here might be like, this kind of idealized, you know, based on what I'd known about the beats and what I'd known about San Francisco, and in fact my brother and other people I knew had been living here for a while, so I got this idealized idea of what it would be like in my head, and my idealized version of the San Francisco poetry scene is a lot like what goes on here every week at Sacred Ground. So, yeah, dig yourselves, which is a phrase I've been dying to find a reason to say. So, anyway, thank you for being the embodiment of my idealization of the San Francisco poetry scene. And with that, I give you my last piece. Recently, I wandered into a bad part of town where a group of shiny, bright white lights were holding a poker game in the shell of a burned-out Tahini raincoat. And after losing all of my money to the shiny, bright white lights, I wandered into a cafe where, on a small stage in the back, a band called Cutlery on Prozac were doing their big hit, Stairway to Prozac. And after grooving on that tune for a while, I wandered into the men's room and did heroin with an apologetic, homoerotic grizzly bear who laughed at everything I said. I awoke the next morning to find the beautiful blonde poetess I loved standing over my futon. She emanated a shiny, bright white light, which took the form of a small child who gave me a cigarette. I set my desk on fire and was about to light up when my willpower sent over one of its thugs who tried to intimidate me, but instead tripped over one of the Janis Joplin commemorative Southern Comfort bottles which littered the floor of my apartment. So I smoked, and this sent me into a downward spiral. I became obsessed with small, dark spaces. I bathed in 30-weight oil. I took my dry cleaning to a psychic. I spent the first birthday I've had in years alone. Cops began making appointments to arrest me. The internet crashed my rent party. My ex-suntan made long-distance phone calls to disease-ridden prostitutes and charged them to my phone. And suddenly, everyone became better than me. Finally, a couple of pockmarked brain cells invited me to an underground parking garage in the Sudan to smoke some weed. I opted instead for a solitary walk along a quiet beach, where I once again came upon the beautiful blonde poetess that I loved. She was drawing pictures of old boyfriends in the sand and crying. I knelt beside her and took her in my arms. Above us, seagulls formed a string quartet and played sweetly. Pollution took the day off. Fevers broke. Congressmen pinched their own asses. And for just a moment, no one, anywhere, used the phrase, "Why don't you go back where you came from?" Thank you very much.